All right. Hello, everyone. You are listening to the Blockchain Socialist Podcast. I'm Josh, and I'm here with Primavera, and we are continuing our overthrow of the network state. Today, now, we're here with Ali Brayland, who is a journalist at Mother Jones, who recently wrote a piece, I'm just pulling it up here, titled "A Peter Thiel-Linked Startup is Courting New York Scenesters and Plotting a Libertarian Paradise. The Praxis Society envisions a Mediterranean enclave with just the right kind of people." So it was like a piece talking about Ali's kind of story of encountering people from Praxis Society and going to this party and digging into them a little bit. And so I thought it'd be a good opportunity to talk specifically about this example of Praxis Society, which is one that has pretty overtly kind of embraced the idea and language around the network state, as far as I understand. And there have been rumors sort of crawling around in different spaces about, you know, which island they're going to buy in the Mediterranean, or which piece of land they're going to buy in most probably in Eastern Europe or something like that, in order to create their utopia. But so, yeah, Ali, if you want to give an introduction to yourself a little bit, in case there's anything I missed, and recount us with the story of your first encounter at this party with Praxis people.
Hey, yeah, thank you for having me. That all sounds about right. I'm a reporter at Mother Jones. Sometimes, occasionally, I freelance, kind of on the intersection of tech, politics, and the internet. And yeah, the story kind of I guess was something that was very much on that. I guess the way I came to Praxis was that I had first seen a New York Magazine story that was sparse on details, but a writer who I think was young, and this was one of their first stories, had managed to get into one of their parties. It seemed like they were doing this weird sort of scene cultivation thing in the New York downtown scene that I guess kind of comprises Times Square, which, if your listeners aren't familiar, is this, I'm not going to get it right, but basically it's a sort of arts and cultural and persona building scene in downtown New York, where people are there are some people who are very into left politics, and then there's some people who are sort of quote unquote post left or dissident right, who I guess are engaging varying degrees of right wing to even fascier kind of politics. And I was very interested in what this supposed Peter Thiel funded loft was doing amidst this, why they were trying to cultivate these people. And so I kind of had an eye on it, but I didn't have any clear ends. I would go to sort of different events downtown, and people would occasionally bring it up, or especially when they heard what my job was and what I was interested in, they would mention that they were curious about Praxis and asked if I knew anything. And so then I forget how it came on my radar, but they're having an event week where they were throwing a lot of parties that were semi-open to the public. You could RSVP and get in. And so I went to this sort of rap party. It's a music rap event that they'd funded, where they had a bunch of really cool drill artists and Jersey club rappers that I would have been interested in seeing, even if it weren't for work. And so I thought that was really interesting. And so I wanted to go see more. And I ended up going to this weird party. Yeah, it worked out perfectly. Yeah, and I went to their event. It was weird. It was sparsely populated. It was in Midtown, which is it was around chain restaurants. I left my credit card at the venue, and so I went back the next day to get it. And it was not sceney at all. I think there was some sort of veteran or military social group that was having an event there when I went to get my credit card. But yeah, it was super weird. I was trying to figure out what was going on. I didn't get a lot of answers initially, but it was this sort of weird scene. Everyone was talking about Peter Thiel kind of vaguely being behind it. The people I was speaking with were not directly involved in Praxis, so they didn't understand the specific mechanics, but there was this dark energy in the air because people kind of knew that maybe there was this seedier thing happening going on that they didn't quite get. And I was trying to figure out what that was.
I guess I'm not so surprised maybe that people like Peter Thiel and other Silicon Valley types have properties like this, potentially to cultivate whatever certain scenes that revolve around maybe the ideas that they are interested in.
Yeah, totally. There is the story was kind of almost intended to get into this more widely, but yeah, I was very interested in trying to understand like what Peter Thiel was interested in this scene for, and like why it was also through the guise of Praxis, which was this startup that is like, I found out, trying to build a, I guess, like city in the Mediterranean that is like sort of crypto based, but like sort of not. It's like unspecified as to like what this specific crypto link is. But another thing that ended up not getting mentioned in the story is like there are a lot of rumors about Thiel and like other far right sort of billionaires writing these checks like off the book. Like I don't know if this is a fact. I want to be very clear. This is just like a rumor. I haven't seen any sort of direct paper trail, but there are these like open rumors if you talk to people in these scenes downtown about money flowing, not just into Praxis, but other sort of spaces where cultural and reading events are going on, and like different readings to try to, I guess, like seed these spaces for this sort of like frame of right-wing thinking that I think is like not normally accepted in New York, and it's not normally accepted in like the cultural vanguard, which I think like is seen to be true or not like dominated by sort of like liberal, progressive, and left type people. And like Praxis is like very much like a city building startup in a literal sense, and that's like its main function. But it was also, I think, useful, and as my reporting like went on, it's useful to understand it as like a vector and like a window into like how these people were thinking about like politics and like what I guess like these far right VC funders are like thinking about like kind of what they wanted to like change and
so
shift.
Like when you
I guess like American political
came to
discourse
this
to be.
event, was it like a presentation of Praxis? Like, this is who we are, this is what we're doing, come join us, become a citizen, or something like that?
I think there was different types of events. So the first party that I was at, it was like Throne was like the rappers. It was in the background. It was almost hidden. There was like a rumor going around that Praxis wasn't even involved, which didn't seem to make any sense because it was like very much a part of a week that Praxis was intentionally holding. That I think was like more of like a brand building exercise. The other kind of event, which I never went to, is like they were also throwing parties inside their loft headquarters for a while, where they would invite, from what I'd heard, they would invite like these sort of podcast Substack writers in this like weird post-left space. They would invite like models and these other people. And then the other kind of more formal event that they had, which I also attended later in the week, was this open house series that they had where if you registered and went, which I did, you could go and like kind of talk to people in the actual organization and have like a talk, not just about the scene cultivation of the cultural aspects of what they were getting into, but the sort of like what Praxis literally is pitching itself as to investors and like what the primary function of it's supposed to be. And so I went to their loft for that during the day and just talked to their head of research about what their aspirations were and like what the planning process was going like for building the actual city that they were trying to build. They're telling people that they're trying to build.
So what types of things were they saying? Were they telling you?
Yeah, they had like a bunch of glossy 3D renderings of these modernist buildings that looked very much like Zaha Hadid buildings because according to what they told me, Zaha Hadid architects, they'd been speaking with them about building. I forget if it was government buildings or like private buildings, but there was like some distinction, and Zaha Hadid Architects was potentially going to be contracted in discussions with them for contracts on one of these. According to what I was told, I reached out to Zaha Hadid Architects. They never said anything back to me, not even a no comment, nothing off the record. So I don't know what it is on their end, but that's like one thing they were talking about. At different points in my reporting, I came across from former employees and from what they told me directly there, it was like they were talking about building the city at one point in North Africa. Italy was talked about. Montenegro was talked about as like potential locations. I think that if I'm remembering correctly, I want to say it was Morocco or another North African country that I was told about at the open house, and they said that they were talking to the state phosphorus company about potentially acquiring land that state phosphorus company owned and building on that. But a lot of it was also like very vague. Like they'd only raised 20 million at that point, which is like, enough to like maybe build a hotel or two, not like an entire city. So like they were very much in like almost a pre-planning phase where they couldn't lock anything in fully because they didn't have like the capital base to actually make this thing work, which like I think they understood.
Yeah, I found it like very fascinating with Praxis. It's like because they talk about like a lot of stuff that is very unclear, but it's like there's literally like you cannot talk about any of that with $20 million in your pocket. it's like so either it's like trying to raise more funds to do that. Like I don't know if those parties were actually some form of fundraising to like talk about the vision and try to get people to buy in, or is it just like what's the plan? Like if do they have like a roadmap or something?
Yeah, that's actually really important. So there's like almost, this will help, I guess, like draw the delineation further. There's almost like two faces that Praxis presents, and there is a sort of more professional, like managerial Silicon Valley tech face that they have that they put on to their investors, and this sort of more, I think that this is like a common term, but they what they call like the graybeards, and they like, I guess, present themselves as a company that is like doing these kinds of things. And so like the concerts and events were not for the graybeards. They were for a different side. They were for not pursuing VC money, but pursuing the cultural aspect. I think that their thesis, what had been told to me that their thesis was that they, almost in the way that like Berlin or like Williamsburg or Brooklyn or like other parts of LA and have become these sort of very attractive places, which wasn't always the case. They came through this arc of them becoming attractive places first for artists and these sort of cultural tastemakers. And so what they were trying to do is like establish their own set of cultural tastemakers within New York. Then they would get at least some of them to go to Praxis. And then in getting this like attractive group of people to come first, they would be able to build out the rest of the city. And so that was what kind of it's my understanding that was the sort of cultural aspect of what was happening. But yeah, like I think that they put on a relatively like professional face and like weren't throwing these sorts of parties or really having the sort of graybeard investor VC types at these parties. Everyone I saw kind of at the party I went to, and my understanding from talking to other people is it's usually like a sort of like younger set, Zoomers and young millennials and more cultural people than. And then with some exceptions, I think that there are people at the intersection. Like, I don't know much about Rivitez, but my guess is that, she'd be someone that would straddle both worlds. But yeah, it usually skews younger for the concerts, and then they have the professional VC stuff.
So it's kind of like get the cool kids. It's like an explicit strategy for gentrification.
Yeah, kind of just do like a sort of simulated gentrification within New York, and then I guess like, ship that gentrification off to North Africa or Italy or somewhere in the Adriatic.
And what is because like from what you say to me, I have like a hard time hearing anything network statey. Like it sounds more like either an attempt of just bringing cool kids in a particular neighborhood to gentrify it, or perhaps if we need to push a little bit the narrative, it's more like a charter city. But like, to which extent do they at least claim to be or to become a network state as opposed to just a neighborhood of people?
Yeah, this is I guess like some of my answer might be a little limited because I'm like not an expert in network states in the way that you guys are, but like this is also a problem that they struggle to articulate internally. So like from talking to former employees, the CEO Dryden and other top leadership at Praxis would sort of articulate this vision of being this place that could be a city that would be a part of like potentially networks of other cities where people could like migrate freely in and out, and this sort of like vote with your feet democratic process could occur where people could go to the most attractive cities, and it would be this extremely laissez-faire, like free capital, free human inflows and outflows thing could happen. But then the sort of contradictory problem of it was that from what I was told, Dryden and sort of like also had this sort of like authoritarian impulse that was both manifest in the books he was reading, but also what he was saying about like the vision that he wanted to cultivate and curate. And so it seemed like he was never able to sort of square and rectify his vision for like a free market neoliberal like libertarian paradise with like his desire to have order and control in the specific way that he wanted to. So like I think there was like clearly a network state aspiration, but like they're really into like far right sort of like fascist and fascist adjacent things, and it's hard to make those things work. And when you have that kind of tendency, even if you start off as like a free market sort of enterprise, like eventually you'll start cracking down on things, which is like maybe a problem inherent to all network states. I don't know, but like they maybe were just jumping the gun on what like an issue is, or what an inevitable issue kind of is with these kinds of things.
Yeah, one of the things that may be worth like adding for context based on the bit of research that I've done is that Praxis Society, I mean, we spoke about Praxis Society in a previous episode earlier in the year where we kind of read like the first part of Dryden's like first blog post, which was very like, I mean, for me, I would say fascistic in that it was kind of like glorifying manifest destiny in the Americas. And that his family, his great-grandfather was like paramount to basically the killing of indigenous people, and that, you know, they were able to claim it for themselves, and that was a beautiful thing, and we need to go back to the day whenever men were able to be men and go to the frontier and all this type of stuff. But also, Praxis is funded by Pronomos Capital, is one of their funders, and they are a VC fund specifically made for charter cities and inherently network states. So like the main founder is Patry Friedman, who is I think he's the grandson of Milton Friedman, definitely carries the same type of politics. And then as well, an advisor is Balaji. He is listed as an advisor on the Pronomos Capital site, at least. And yeah, their portfolio includes basically exclusively things like Praxis, including Prospera. It includes other kind of like smaller things, like they have some things in Africa and other such things for like digital nomads type, which are all kind of tangentially related, I guess, to their wider kind of ideal of like making connected cities that then people can go back and forth between as like what they ideally want, like you described. But yeah, so like there is almost like it's pretty, if you just like connect the dots of the people that are associated with it, there's already kind of like this right-wing association, just with the people that they're taking money from, the things that they have written, the type of contents that they have created. I know there's a video on YouTube, I don't know if it's still up there, but that advertises Praxis Society, which is very, I mean, if you just watch it, it's like 20 minutes long, but it's like very much a, like it has a lot of very fascistic undertones, let's say. But yeah, I guess at the same time, one of the things that you noted in your piece is that there were like people talking about the fact that a lot of, especially Dryden and others, were reading like right-wing literature, like philosophical literature. There is like explicitly fascist. Like it's, I don't know, there's like no other real way to kind of like describe it besides that, because they were philosophers who described themselves as such. So like I'm trying to like stress that I'm not like trying to like make a hyperbole or something like that.
Yeah, totally. It is. Yeah, it's like an inevitable thing that like comes back up, and in some ways too, yeah, it is like very much like people who are openly far right and like fascist. It's like Julius Evola, who like I describe in the piece as a fascist Italian writer and occult researcher who worked with a Nazi branch of the SS. There's like Alexander Dugin, who is a contemporary Russian fascist. Yeah, Alexander Dugin. Others came up. There's people who are like less clear, but like sort of things that like fascists like to read, and like in the context of like everything else we know, it's like kind of obvious. And in some ways, this is like a sort of like extreme outlier. Like I don't think that from what we know, like Balaji is not sitting down and reading like these kinds of things, as best as I can tell. People like Andreessen are not Peter Thiel. It's like a little less clear, but like I was reading the Californian ideology for a separate story that I'm doing on effective accelerationism that will come out soon. But like it kind of made a very good point that like even when you're not doing outright sort of far right fascism, the results through this like sort of Californian ideology of like aggressive neoliberal free market principles that like champion the sort of like tech Silicon Valley bro or person or individual above everyone else produce sort of similar results of oppression, even if like the intent is not the same. And the authors are sort of making the really good point that for all of these things to work, they require like a sort of serf class, and they require like an oligarchy to exist above them. And maybe the specifics of Pronomos or Prospero like work a little bit differently, but like for these digital nomads to work in these places and for it to be like very attractive and useful to them, there has to be this like sort of aggressive class dynamic where these people who are brown, which one is like a general point, but two, an explicit point of the California ideology paper. These people that are brown have to be their underclass. And so in Silicon Valley, that takes like the form of there being these engineers and then there being the sort of like often Latino or other races, people who are the janitors who are like working in the cafeterias. And then Prospera, like Pronomos, and then eventually like if Praxis works, are just like more extreme versions of that where like, I guess like the oligarchy systems are like flipped and like it's like tech is like of an oligarchy here in the United States that is like very powerful and influential, but like in these sorts of spaces they become like the totalizing oligarchs that do have like all of the power. And so even if the goal isn't explicitly fascist, like the results are going to be like pretty similar, and there's going to be a class of people whose freedoms will be fairly restricted, who will not have like resources, who will not have economic freedom, even if they do like on paper and they can technically move between different sort of neoliberal free market places where they probably can't like afford to live very nicely.
Right. Yeah. It's sort of, if you want to portray your kind of utopia that you will be able to live like very comfortably with all of these like amenities next to you, there has to be someone there that can give it to those people. And the cheaper that you can find for them to be able to give those amenities, you know, the more people then you can try to have come to your utopia. But there is this inherent need for a kind of underclass of people to provide those services at a cheap price as well, just for the people who are investing in, like Pronomos, who are investing in these types of things. There has to be class difference, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I mean, you know, as a journalist, it's not my job to like foreclose on like different like sorts of like things that exist in the world, but like I think have yet to see like an extremely aggressive free market, laissez-faire type of economy like actually work in a way that is equitable. And like maybe one could exist, but like if you look to like places like Chile or whatever, where it has been like tried and or like iterations of, I guess, the United States that were like more free market relative to how they were now or how they were like pre-1980s between like the Depression and the 80s, like you see a sort of like dark vision for what like does happen. You see like rampant inequality and like unrest. Like, I don't know, maybe it's possible, but like, I guess like what they're proposing, I sort of seeks to recreate like pretty difficult conditions for people who are not a part of this like new gentry that they would be generating.
But do you see that like when you went to these types of events, would the people who were there know about this, or would they care about it, or would they just kind of, would they just be, they're just there for the free drinks or something? Like I've done that before.
This is it's complicated and multifaceted. So like at the first party I went to, there was discourse about it and people were like, I don't support this, but I am here. And like that is sort of a microcosm of a type of behavior that exists more broadly. I won't like I don't want to say who specifically it is, but like there was like a person who is in this sort of world that has more explicitly left politics, who was critical of Praxis, and they went on a podcast and were like openly critical of it. And then I went to try to talk to them about it for the story, and they were very hesitant to go on the record because I don't understand the specifics of what happened, but like my understanding is that there was maybe some sort of like social reprimanding that had happened because the people who are left in these spaces and acknowledge and like understand like the just how dark the politics of these things can be, still, because of how expensive New York has become, like still sort of need to exist in these spaces or need money to continue their own enterprises and need these social connections. And so it becomes like this weird thing where people are kind of aware, but because there needs to be this dark money to flow and to like fund the art that's happening, it just extremely expensive real estate situations, like some people are willing to turn a blind eye. Aesthetically, there is this sort of like desire to sort of be post woke. And so some of it is like aesthetically bolstered by a desire to like seem like, even if you don't agree with someone's politics, it's like cool to talk to them. And like, even if like you find their politics to be potentially like very reprehensible and discriminatory. So there is like that level of awareness. And then but then the permission structure just sort of like allows the enmeshment to occur. And then I think that I did talk to someone about something that I had to leave out of the story because I couldn't report it all the way that I wanted to. But this person was, I guess, kind of telling me that after like certain incidents, praxis became like sort of like not as accepted in a lot of these spaces and became like something that people were wary of. And like, but like at the same time, people were still going to their thing. So it's like unclear to me as to like how much they were pushed out. I know that a little bit after the story came out, I don't know if it was because of the story, because of other things related to it, like Dryden sort of pivoted on his Twitter away from New York. And after doing all of this work to enmesh himself deep within New York culture and enmesh praxis deep within New York culture, he pivoted away and was talking about how San Francisco is the new hub of things, and he wants to be in San Francisco a lot when he's not in the EU because it's actually like way cooler and more interesting. So like that might be a sign that like praxis is no longer welcome in New York in the same way. Employees that would work for them, some of them wouldn't know, and like that's why I was able to talk to them, is because they would come in and see this and be like, oh god, this is like way weirder than I anticipated it was. A lot of the contractors I think were kept in the dark. Like my understanding, some of this is reporting and some of this is rumors. Like the contractors just had less of an idea of what was going on because they weren't in the office all the time. And then I heard a rumor that at least one employee left after my story because of, I guess, like them coming to understand what was going on more and it being kind of kept from them. But yeah.
Hi, everyone. If you're enjoying this episode so far, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, share with a friend, and join the crypto leftist communities on Discord or Reddit, which you can find links to in the show notes. If you're enjoying the episode or find the content I make important, you can pitch into my efforts starting at $3 a month on patreon.com/theblockchainsocialist to help me out and join the nearly 100 other patrons that contribute financially, which really helps since making this stuff isn't free in terms of money or time. As a patron, you'll get a shout out on an episode and access to bonus content like Q&A episodes where you can submit and vote on questions you'd like me to answer, and I'll give my thoughts in roughly 20 minutes. The current bonus episodes have so far explored plenty of topics, including how co-ops and DAOs relate, whether there is a socialist blockchain, a review of previous crypto events I've been to, and recently a video reaction to an episode of the Deprogram. Of course, I'll still be making free content like this episode to help spread the message that blockchain doesn't need to be used to further entrench capitalist exploitation if we put our efforts into it. So if that message resonates with you, I hope you'll consider helping out. Prima, did you want to add anything? I know I've been talking a bit.
Yeah, maybe like on a slightly different thing. Like I was curious, like whether you did ask them about, like, you know, they have this thing of like you can apply for a visa, and you know, you have like whatever. I did not apply, so I don't know exactly what's the process, but like they have like interviews and then they decide whether to give you the visa. So I was wondering, like, if you've been investigating this and like what does that even mean, you know, to get a visa? Because like if I'm someone, whatever the country that they decide to install themselves into, even if I get a praxis visa, that doesn't necessarily give me a visa in that country. So I was just curious, like, what is this visa about? Is it like a visa that requires also the land visa, or do they want to create some kind of partnership with whatever country they are gonna invade, colonize, to apply, that the visa that you apply for praxis also give you a visa to the country, and things like that. Like what's up with that visa thing?
Out of curiosity, like, was the visa like a more recent thing, or has that just like been around for a while?
I mean, I've seen it on the website
Got it.
a few time ago. I don't know when they introduced it.
Okay.
I have not applied, so I don't know if it's even. I mean, like I'm on the website now, and it says you can apply. You can submit an application to get your steel visa, whatever that is.
Oh
And
yes,
then
yeah.
it says you get like tax advantage and then a permanent visa without restriction. And so I'm just like, how can you claim that when you don't even know what the country you're going to be at is?
Yeah, so I think some of that came out after I'd finished reporting. So like I didn't exactly keep up with it, but from what I did report on and like extrapolating that out to the current moment, like, yeah, you're exactly right. They're extremely early along in the pointing stages. Like it's unclear. I heard a rumor that they're getting some money in Series B. I don't know if it's true or not, but they need more money for this to continue. And if they don't get it, like, they're not that far along. It's like not going to keep working, but in all likelihood. But from like what I'd heard on their membership stuff already, like the sort of status of being like a Praxis member already without this like formalized visa thing was like sort of weird. And there were people who were sort of like on their member list that were like not actually dedicated or that interested, but like had sort of just come on. And like my understanding, the sort of like the thing I reported on, which like I think is I would treat as a rumor more than like reported fact, was that like the list appeared to be sort of like inflated and was like anyone kind of who had worked for Praxis or was like had gone to events, like the bar for them getting on this list of members is pretty low. And like a lot of people weren't actually paying the money to be on the list, but Praxis also needed to like say that there was a lot of people who were members to be able to show that to potential investors and funders. So like the visa thing sort of, I don't know if do you have to pay to have the visa? Was there any aspect?
So I'm looking now at the website. There is no specific information whether you have to pay. It's unclear.
Yeah. Maybe like some of that too is like there seems to be
I think you need to apply first and then they might ask you.
Yeah. That might be, again, this is speculation, but that might be a sort of a part of the strategy of like sort of keeping things loose, because like there were some people that were paying and there were some people that were able to be on lists and they were like deemed important enough to like get out of paying up front initially, because again, it's like kind of a tall order to ask people, especially like someone who's like maybe more of an artistic or creative background, to pay a lot of money up front for this thing that doesn't even exist.
It's interesting.
But yeah.
The advantages include path to citizenship in selected host country. So whatever they select, you'll get citizenship there eventually. But also, like tax advantages, land ownership. Like these are things that, like those are things that I would move to a country to if I was rich,
But it's also something that you cannot promise. Like it's sure. I mean, I can claim the same thing. Just join my non-existing country, and I'm gonna give you a visa to Primavera. Nothing. It's like tax advantage is clearly something that the government has to give. Land ownership as well. Path to citizenship as well. Work authorization as well. Like those are all things that you cannot just provide a visa independently of the nation states to approve this.
Yeah, this is something that was like top of mind for them too. I remember asking the head of research, because he was telling me that they were kind of like at that point, sort of like not deciding, but like sort of going back and forth between Italy and North Africa. And like the advantage of North Africa was that, to him, was that they could sort of pressure the country into giving them more tax advantages. So like, I guess maybe that sort of rhetoric is a sign that they're maybe leaning towards a country that has like a weaker national government and is like they can try to bend it towards their will more. And so maybe they're not as interested in Italy. But I mean, I don't know. And I don't know if they know either.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting that he was so explicit about that. Maybe they considered Italy because because of Maloney or something like that.
Yeah.
So maybe they thought it might be a good spot.
That's really fun. Maybe. I think the other thing they said about Italy was like they didn't say Maloney explicitly, but the thing that they told me was that it is more stable and like it's an easier sell to people to come to Italy than it is to come and live in Morocco or even Montenegro.
They have a very difficult thread to needle with like finding a place that is like desirable and also influenceable with their money and network.
Yeah, no, it is super weird, but like I guess I don't know, and like again, fully speculation. I don't know, but like maybe it's all just sort of like long stalling and sort of working through it as like they try to get the money together. Because yeah, you do kind of have to keep up appearances because it's like hard to make substantial progress when you have $20 million and you don't have like a lot of incoming cash flow or ways to make money that are particularly reliable. Like my understanding is that they were not really selling much. Like they had merch, but they were giving the merch away for free.
Did you get a Praxis t-shirt?
Like and even if they were selling it, like I actually have a hat. I did get a hat at the open house.
You're a citizen now.
Right. No, if I go there and they have jurisdiction, I don't know. I don't know if that's good for me. I maybe shouldn't be hanging out in Praxis. But yeah, like I heard, yeah, there's just like not a lot of money coming in right now. So I don't understand how they would make substantial plans forward. I assume that Zaha Hadid Architects would want like some sort of money to continue with things, and like other contractors that need more money. So it's like hard to break ground on 20 million.
Yeah. For the amount of like STEM people they have, supposedly, I would think on their team, the math is not working out very well so far. I think it's interesting because if you go to their website, there is this like big, beautiful, rendering of very green, like luscious, like beachfront city with like a bunch of they look like the Barcelona super blocks kind of spread out in this like nice looking pattern. And I tried just now kind of like applying to the citizenship. And it's interesting. I mean, they're asking for a lot of information about me. And also they have a section of list any Praxis members you know personally. And like your affiliations with any organizations. And if I open up the affiliated organizations, like I just accidentally did, it includes the Teal Fellowship, Y Combinator, Urbit, OpenAI, Anduril, any Elon Musk company, Emergent Ventures. I don't know what a couple of these other ones look like, VC funds. But I mean, yeah, I feel like they're giving away the game a little bit of the types of people they expect would be interested in this and would want to come. And these are also, groups and organizations with founders who are also like associated with the far right. Anyways, I accidentally clicked on it and then opened up a lot.
Yeah, no, very much so. Yeah, and did you say these are affiliated companies? Or like how are they?
Yeah, like Urbit is Curtis Yarvin.
Yeah. Well, sorry, did Praxis call them like affiliate companies, or like how did Praxis describe these companies as?
No, it's just the question is just, are you affiliated with any of the following organizations? And
okay, yeah. I mean, I think to me, from like just what I know, like that reads like speculation, or that reads like a wish list of like aspirational desires for like what they want to be like affiliated with, more so than what they kind of actually are affiliated with. Like there is some crossover. Like I don't want to say that they're like Teal does indirectly like have money via Pronomos and via Tyler Cowen, whose interest in this is like really interesting. And I think it's like really interesting that he never commented because he is someone that presents himself, I think, as more of like a sort of soft center left liberal person with some libertarian tendencies who ostensibly would not want to be tied to like a far right project. But yeah, no, there is like a sort of like aspirationalness of like, and that was like sort of a big thing that undergirds the company. Like Dryden, according to my sources, used the company to try to like position himself in a specific social way, and like establish himself within proximity to cultural figures. He went and tried to work with people adjacent to Kanye West, or in those sorts of like cultural spaces. He also is like really fascinated and like really, really looked up to Elon Musk. And so it tracks that he would want to be around people who like have worked at Elon Musk companies or like worked for those kinds of things. Yeah, but again, if like you work at these companies and you're like kind of doing all right, like why would you want to take a chance on this company that is has yet to do anything and like no clear path to it? But yeah, and again, like as Elon becomes like more openly like far right, and as like Peter Thiel's like kind of made his like politics explicitly clear, it sort of signals like what the game is and like what they're trying to do and what they're interested in.
Yeah, to me it seems like it's a very good example of like fake it till you make it. Meaning it's like there is hardly anything, and it's like saying that there is things until attracting people at the beginning that think that there might be something, and then using those people to attract more people. It's just like associating yourself with companies that don't even know about you. It's just like it's there seems to be very little substance. I mean, like even the website is completely empty of anything except claims. But it's just like claims that are completely unsubstantiated.
But I think this is like taking the startup playbook of like Silicon Valley. What is it? Move fast and break things type of thing.
I think that that's all completely accurate. There's like a story, I have a sort of sliver of it in the story, but it's like they spent a lot of money to go to Cannes. And part of why they were going to Cannes is like so that they could hobnob with rich people. And they tried to throw this party, which they kind of like didn't even get into their own sort of party that they were funding. But like they tried to throw this party to attract rich people to sort of seem like they were part of this milieu, so that they could establish themselves and like try to get people interested in this kind of thing. Which on one hand is like, it's bizarre on multiple levels, because like they're trying to establish themselves in this highbrow milieu and like sort of like in this goofy way that like screams of like sort of like faking it till you make it and sort of like inauthenticity. But at the same time, Dryden is of like relative, pedigree, if you care about that kind of thing. His family is like fairly wealthy, both from like what they literally had. He grew up in like a very expensive home. And then from my reporting too, it kind of looked like I didn't report it all the way out. We didn't like verify it, so I'm not going to say specifically, but it appears as though he is also like of a family, like of a large sort of fortune, that goes back generations, that has made substantial amounts of money. So he is like literally of this like sort of rich pedigreed world. But then like, even despite that, I guess like there was like this desire to like still affect that you were in this space and like doing it in these like goofy ham-fisted ways that didn't clearly like return anything to them. And so it seems goofy, and it seems like it's not worth taking them super seriously, because like it is not this like serious enterprise that will probably like amount to things. I guess it like the jury's still out on whether or not that be the case, whether they'll fail or succeed. But even if they fail, like it's also really useful to see them not just as like a city building startup, but as this expression of these tendencies within Silicon Valley, and as an expression of these founders sort of like telling us what they actually think about the world. We kind of understand it more so with Elon Musk every time he tweets something. We kind of understand it with Peter Thiel through the really good reporting that's been done on him by people like Max Chafkin, his biographer, and like other people. But I think it's some of them still like to quote unquote like hide their power level and not tell us the full extent of what they think. But like in funding these kinds of things, in funding someone that we know now is like reading these kinds of books, is engaged in these sort of like far right projects, someone who people around him have said he is racist, like in them being okay with that, they're letting us know what is like actually going on in Silicon Valley, in the spaces that like I can't enter or like other people can't enter, but like where conversations are being had. And it like lets us know that like these people who are the masters of the universe, in like a financial sense, and want to like control more and more of the world, like kind of think pretty dark things and sort of don't think very much of the rest of the population, in a pretty scary way.
Yeah. Maybe to try and give, we say, benefit of the doubt, or to try to find a maybe slightly more positive thread to pull on here. is there, like, did you find anyone who was in there who was like maybe, like, could you garner any kind of like relative ideas as to why maybe some of the non-racist people maybe were interested in projects like this?
Yeah, I think that some people came to it because they were genuinely interested in doing something that was like new and refreshing and had an impact on the world. Like there, I think, was this desire to, I don't know if like network states are the answer. It seems like they're not, but like there are problems with the nation states, and like they're, as like they're currently construed, like most sort of global powers have extremely large body counts, you know, whether it's like authoritarian left like the USSR, or it's just like the sort of like libertarian quasi oligarchy democracy thing like the United States. Like they're, all of these countries have like large body counts that they've like collected in the name of patriotism and nationalism, and that is a problem. And like maybe the way out of that is like something that's not a nation state. There are also nation states that have not done these kinds of like things. So I don't know, but like I think that they saw a potential to like do something that was interesting and different, and maybe it wasn't going to work. Maybe it was going to be bad, but I think that their initial, when they came there, they didn't think it was going to be bad in like a racist far right way. They just thought maybe this was like, I don't know, flawed or failed, but like in a way that would like only harm the company, wouldn't be bad on like an external level. And so, yeah, I think that's like why they were there, to kind of like put words in their mouth without like fully understanding their motivations.
I think, yeah, that is one thing that I find interesting, that like it is a critique that I ultimately agree with, as far as like the issues with the nation states and it being completely, I mean, just failing at answering society's biggest problems and the ones that feel like need to be answered sooner than later. It is like, and that critique also happens on the far right, but it happens in a way that, you know, they think that the state is, you know, preventing the progress of technology and allowing you to be ultimately free and like whatever else. So it is like a difficult, but it's like ultimately just like a very, the sort of, I would say the solutions that they bring forth are more about leaning into almost like the worst aspects of the nation state possible as like the answer, which is why I think the reason why, like, I think we find the need to create the concept of a coordination, which we have been sort of preaching about on the podcast, is to provide this like alternative space for people who also feel like completely let down and disillusioned by nation states, to find something else that goes into a more progressive direction, and ultimately, I think, much more likely to answer the questions that in a way that they would like it to be answered than it is sort of like a VC-backed charter city.
Yeah, totally. Like, I don't know. I think that there's like a reason that like in these sort of network state conceptions, whether it be something, you know, with like this like thinly veiled like far right project that like Praxis is doing, or like the by like relative comparison innocuous version that like Balaji is interested in, like for the most part, they're not like trading in the language of like liberation or equality, or even just like basic things as like mitigating, I don't know, just like suffering on some level. Like they're very interested almost in like, maybe the most progressive version that I've come across is like creating like an oligopoly that extends to like the upper middle classes, and like maybe it's just like it's like a wider level of like prosperity for like a larger amount of elite people. But yeah, it doesn't, they're not like particularly interested in like building like a vision of a future that is better for like all different types of people. And you can kind of also see it, this is like kind of reductive and cheap, but it's just like obvious. Like San Francisco like is a weird state, and it's like they love to talk about how it's because of like the weird like mayor and like the leadership, and like I'm not going to defend, I don't have particularly strong feelings about like London Breed or like the actual politics of like San Francisco, but it also has like all happened under their purview, and like it has happened through them shaping politics and like and it has happened through like their shaping of the city. And like if there are other cities in the country where people make large amounts of money and they don't look like San Francisco. They haven't produced like these weird levels of inequality. They haven't produced this weird like cultural tension. Like there's lots of unhealthy things happening across the country, but San Francisco is like this extremely almost unique outlier, and like it's dominated by tech, and to like say that there's not a link between these two things feels just like extremely naive. And that's like when they don't fully explicitly control everything. Like I'm not excited about a world that is like completely controlled by these people. That doesn't seem preferable, but you know, I don't know, maybe they'll prove me wrong.
Yeah. Did you have anything to add, Primavera?
No, I think I generally agree. No, I think it's interesting because there's like, you know, it's like, of course, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be surrounded with people that are aligned in terms of value, and there's lots of people that are doing this. The distinction, I think, is when by doing that, you're also trying to disconnect from the others, right? And I think that's the distinction when you have like, there's a lot of more like common-based, attempt at actually doing similar things of like, let's all live together in an area and let's grow our own garden and blah, blah, blah. Let's be autonomous as much as we can. But it's similar in many ways, with the exception that the goal is not to eliminate redistribution and disconnect from how the state is actually trying to govern. Whereas I feel like the distinction with those type of communities that want to be surrounded by aligned people is that when it is about highly libertarian people, there is a disconnect that comes. Like it becomes this kind of exit, this desire towards exit, as opposed to desire towards experimentation within an existing domain. And I think that's where it becomes slightly problematic, unless you actually figure out, the proper relationship with the state and all these things. And then like I don't think charter city are necessarily bad. I think that when the reason why you create the charter city is because you don't want to pay taxes and you just do not support any type of redistribution outside of your own community, then that becomes a problem.
Yeah, I agree. That totally makes sense. That was like a good, correct me if I'm like misunderstanding what you're saying, but like at one part did you almost like compare them to like communes, or is that like just me? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think there is a lot of desire of people finding a strong alignment and deciding to live close to each other and creating those like phalanstères and stuff like that. And this is not bad as such. I think it's quite understandable why you want to be surrounded with people to work together towards a particular societal vision. And so I don't think that is the thing to be criticized, but it's more like, what is the reason that you want to do that, and how do you relate with the outside ecosystem?
Mm-hmm. Josh Citarella, the artist, made like what I thought was like a good observation, that like kind of at that point, like what you're saying basically, like communes like aren't necessarily bad, and these things aren't like bad enterprises, but like if you are interested in like structural change and making people's lives better and like being an ethical person, like your solution has to go beyond just like making the world good for you and your friends. And maybe that's intractable. Maybe it's like impossible to do that. And like in that way, communes are certainly more innocuous than like a network state, which like it creates like an isolated hyper version of like what we already have. It doesn't like opt out in the way that communes do. For as much as they use the language of exit, it's almost like it's like entering into just like a sped up version of this. Like there is like an accelerationist aspect to it, consciously or not.
Yeah. One of my sort of gut reactions or like thinking about this is perhaps with like increasing housing prices and land prices, perhaps the idea of like kind of casually starting a commune is like out of reach for a lot of people, difficult to imagine because of the amount of investment you have to make in the first place. So the only way you can imagine something like that is if you have already like big backers who can buy the land, who can buy the construction that you need for your commune, and that's why people like they don't see themselves being able to buy land and start a commune. They have to join a company that's going to do that for them because all this stuff is kind of complicated and expensive. Maybe that's an aspect of it. I don't know. Just thought of that.
Yeah, no, it is like VCs all the way down. Like, I think that makes sense. And then it's also like to what we like talked about earlier. That's also why like the sort of VC tech people were able to sort of gain a hold in these downtown cultural spaces. Like, I don't think this would have happened 10 or 20 years ago. There would have been like a push to like keep these spaces like pure is not right, but like a little bit, like at the very least, it would have been like a little bit more veiled. I could be wrong, but my understanding of like the CIA money that was like flowing into like beatniks and other types of art was like a little bit more. It was like an open secret, but like there was like a sort of weird dance that happened with it. Whereas like now, like it's not a secret. Everyone that's there kind of talks about it. They'll talk. I'm not that ingratiated in these spaces, and I hear about them quite regularly. It's just like, and I do think, yeah, there's a material reality of like how everything is like so expensive is like how the situation has been produced.
We're coming up on the hour. I don't know, Primavera, is there any like last questions you wanted to ask Ali?
Yeah, maybe like given this little experience that you had, like, do you feel that the people that are not necessarily acquainted with all those discourse and stuff, like if you were to just go there without even knowing where you were going, just like you were invited at a party, is it something that like transpires nonetheless, or is it more like does it feel like it's actually a bunch of cool kids, or is it like some kind of cool kids that are being like somehow, I wouldn't say like brainwashed, but like manipulated or co-opted towards specific belief systems?
I don't know. From the one main party that I was at, like a little bit, but I couldn't tell if that was because like I knew the context going in. I've kind of heard from talking to different people who just like who were around these kinds of things that there was like this like sort of energy, but I don't know if that's like post-rationalizing and people like coming to understand. And like maybe it's just like inextricable because like there is like a sort of rough understanding of things that are going on. So like maybe it's just like kind of in the water and it gets like passed around by word of mouth, and like by this like there's this like a sort of ambient sense of something being off because enough people know about it, even if everyone doesn't. I'm truly not sure. I think that.
But do you feel that overall it was like for the people organizing those parties, was it like, do you feel that overall it was successful? As in like, whatever was the reason, like did they actually succeed in their mission? Or was it just like, let's waste some money to invite people, but there is not an actual positive return on investment?
I think that we'll see. I think that I'm leaning towards no. And I think that the signal for that is Dryden's pivot towards San Francisco and him openly disparaging New York. I think that if he were having more success in New York, he wouldn't have done that. I think that even if he genuinely became more interested in San Francisco, he wouldn't be talking shit on New York in that way. If he felt like things had worked in a way that was advantageous for him in praxis, he wouldn't have burned that bridge. I think. I don't. Yeah, that's my sense of it. But yeah, the party I was at too was like also weirdly sparsely attended. I think that might have been a logistical issue. I heard a rumor that it's because the invite emails went to spam. But yeah, it seems like things weren't working out for them in the way that they kind of wanted it to. And like, it's my understanding that maybe the scene's attention is being like turned away towards other things that are funded by other like right-wing VCs, but are not via praxis. There's like other spaces that are becoming popular as well downtown.
Interesting. I think now is a good time to maybe end it. Thanks so much, Ali, for taking your time and sharing with us your story of going to this praxis party for us so that we didn't have to go. Glad you got to get hat out of it.
Yeah, thank you. It was good. It's my pleasure. Yeah, like I said, it was fun. You know, the rappers are good. there was some indie sleaze that I missed, but it was the bookers did a really good job. I would have to give them credit. I have no criticism with the booking.
Yeah, I guess when you have teal money, you can get some of the best bookers and the best rappers around. Cool. Is there any last things you want to plug, maybe to the audience before we go?
Yeah, my Twitter is just my name, twitter.com/Ali Breland, no spaces, no dots, ALIBRELAND. I'm also on Threads and Blue Sky under the same handle. And yeah, you can read Mother Jones. We're nonprofit, so we're always taking donations if you're inclined. If you are a wealthy, not far right VC, you know, that's maybe an option for you.
Yeah, I heard the Mother Jones parties are way cooler than the Praxis ones.
You know, they're not, honestly. we don't really even have parties, but it's mostly just journalists kind of sitting around, you know, talking about how journalism is a really dire industry.
Yeah, fair. All right. Thanks so much. I highly encourage people to check out Ali's work. He's also done a lot of really nice reporting on crypto as well. I'll link some of those pieces in the show notes. But yeah, thanks so much. See ya.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ali.